Hey everybody, I'm here to talk about the U.S. Networking Users Association. I'm Jason Gintert. I'm one of the co-founders and responsible for a lot of the community outreach at the USNUA. As I like to affectionately say, it's a very environment that works with beer. It doesn't have to be alcoholic or non-alcoholic. You can have that too, but enjoy beers. What is the USNUA? So it's a professional organization that is built around the network engineering community. So we started this in Ohio. Actually started out as the Ohio Networking User Group. We started it, I think it's about 9 years ago now. And really the idea was, many organizations were for other parts of IT. So you had VMware user group, the Linux user group, and there was even some industry-specific networking user groups, like there's the Cisco user group, et cetera. But there wasn't a vendor-neutral organization that got network engineers to talk about the problems of the day, the things that they are encountering in managing and operating their own networks. So we started out doing a few of these Ohio Networking User Group events, and we did the first one in Cleveland. There was about 15 people that showed up to that one, and then we at the next one, a few more people showed up, and eventually we were getting these events up to about I think at peak about 120 people. Regional network engineers that got together, and we'd have a presentation of some kind, a panel discussion, and it was a nice, lively night to get these people together. And one of the coolest things about it was folks that had worked with one another as colleagues, or maybe customer service provider relationships, getting people back together and getting them face to face to interact with one another. It was a really powerful and cool thing. And then COVID happened. So during that time, kind of a Zoom of guys would go grab a beer, or I think a lot of people remember early on during COVID, those Zoom happy hours were pretty popular until everybody got sick of being on Zoom all day for work, and then also personally. But during that time, outside of Ohio, so to create a template that we could leverage to take to other places. So we own event coordinators that are responsible for helping manage each of these events, and we rely on people in each respective region to help with the group organization. Finding a venue for us to get together. And actually, I got Scott Robon here, who was gracious enough to speak about his role as organizer. So he's going to tell you a little more what it looks like. But as I mentioned, the format of the events is a presentation followed by a panel discussion. We have drink at these events, and it's kind of up to each of the local chapters how often they'd like to do them per year. Some people do them quarterly. Some people do, the 2 a year, 1 or 2 a year. It's largely up to them. We give them a lot of flexibility to determine what works for their area. All right, so the format of these events: presentation followed by panel discussion. But we, in that spirit of leaving it open to the local organizers, we allow them to kind of pick how that local event goes. So, for example, in our PA NUG, Pennsylvania NUG chapter, they chose to do it was a panel discussion, but it was podcasters, and they made a podcast out of it. We've also had events where we've done debates. In fact, I think I might have a slide in here on one that we did at the Network Automation Forum event. We had a social event there where we did the great debate of EVPN versus layer 2 leaf spine. Where we had each candidate duking it out about their position. So kind of cool, different types of ideas and different formats that end up at the events. But more often than not, it's a presentation, and it's important to note it's a vendor neutral presentation. So it's about open technologies or interesting problems that folks have solved. For example, we had a retailer in Ohio talk about how they created their own open source routers for 1,600 of their stores. And they talked about, here's the hardware we selected, here's how we built the software stack, here's how we deployed it. So really cool stories about people solving interesting problems.
Jason.
Yes.
Westfall, Future Group.
Yeah.
And regional chapters, how many across the U.S. and is there one in Texas?
There are actually multiple in Texas. We can jump ahead.
All right.
So here's all the different chapters that we have out there today.
Perfect.
Currently, there's 28. We have a few more slated for this year that aren't on here, and we don't like to really reveal those until they actually get up and going because sometimes these things fall through. You have folks that think they're interested, and then they figure out what it might take as far as commitments to drive these sorts of things. And Scott can talk to that. What local organizers are responsible for when it comes to managing these groups. But yeah, you have a few options in Texas. There is actually a few people in. Are you in the Austin area?
Houston.
Houston. Okay, perfect. Yeah, you're set. I was gonna say we did have some Austin folks too, and they come and go, so they'll do their own like little mini events from time to time. But Houston's actually very active, and I actually went down to one of their events not too long ago. So they're a pretty active group, and yeah, that's one of our better ones. So.
We'll help Austin out.
What's that?
We'll help Austin out.
There you go. Thank you.
Lead the way.
So,
Jason,
yes.
Quick question. Just kind of a follow up to this. I noticed that there's not a lot in some states that you would expect them to be. Like for instance, California.
Yes.
Washington. Is there a reason for that?
No, it really comes down to we've had conversations and tried to get traction in those places, but as I'd mentioned, sometimes like those plans fall through, and it could be because of lack of appropriate sponsorship. So the way that we fund these events is by sponsors, either regionally or nationally, but we bring in sponsors, be it VARs or manufacturers, software companies, those in the networking space that want to sponsor an event. And we have a few different sponsorship options. Actually, we have a few new ones coming out that we are hoping will be attractive. But there's a lot of factors about what we've tried to get started in a few Western regions and just fallen through for whatever reason. That said, we are right now working on a new chapter in Seattle. So I can actually get you tied in with those guys. What we like to do is we like to connect the people in each of these regions with the local organizers to help one another out. So I'm happy to connect you with the folks in that region that have plans for an event in the fall for right now. And I just want to state that it might get pushed depending on scheduling and planning and those sorts of things. But for now, tentatively, they're looking at a fall inaugural event. So, and we have had conversations with folks in California. We started these groups as state-based groups initially, but then we had it was actually Phil Gervasi from Kentic who mentioned, hey, I'm in upstate New York. I don't want to go to New York City all the time for these, so
Nobody in upstate wants to go.
right. Yeah, see, there you go. So realizing that there's kind of regional considerations and also just large territories to work with, like talking about Texas, there's just or California. We decided to break them up into city-based regions. So you'll see a few chapters in each of these states. So that's been really successful for us, and we're able to service more folks, make it so they have to travel a shorter distance to get to the events. But we are working on ones in Northern California right now, and had conversations with folks about Southern California. So, I mentioned before we have a few more chapters coming online right now. We're working on about 6 of them. So hopefully you'll see this list grow. One other thing I wanted to mention about the USNUA, and there'll be more on this later. There's a lot of great member resources we're collecting together. We have videos of some of the events available to review. We've done some cool webinars. Phil actually did a great webinar on AI, Phil Gervasi. And there's PowerPoint presentations up there from our events. So if you want to see what other folks have spoken about, you can go into our members section and see those things. We also have a Slack for people to communicate. We have that's a great place to go in and talk to folks in the community. We have a channel for each regional group, so that they can communicate, locally about their events. So a lot of great resources. Most of this can be found on our website, USNUA.com. So if you want to check that out, it's a good place to start. So you're kind of coming back to why we started it. We wanted a vendor neutral place where people could share ideas about networking. This was the event I mentioned at NAF, so we called it NUG at NAF, where we had the great debate of EVPN versus layer 2 leaf spine. We had about 250 folks in the room there. It was a really fun event. We're looking for new ways to do these sorts of things where we're partnering with organizations like NAF and able to bring folks together at some of these national events in addition to the regional events.
Do you see a lot of potential cooperation with some of the local NOG, like the Shy NOG, and there's,
Absolutely, yeah. We've been talking to the regional NOGs and NANOG about potential partnerships and relationships there, where we can, kind of co-market, work together on some of these events. So it's definitely something we're working on right now.
How do you ensure vendor neutrality when it's sponsored by vendors?
That's a great question. We have a lot of mechanisms in place, and it's largely falls to the group organizers to make sure. And I keep teeing Scott up, but we send out yellow and red cards in soccer. I don't know if you guys know, like if there's you have a yellow card, it's a warning. Red card is you're out of the game. We send those cards to the regional organizers so they can warn people if they're being a little overzealous from a sales perspective that they'll pull a card. We've had to use the yellow cards a few times. I think we've only had to use a red card once. Somebody did try to corner someone for a PO and at the event and just wouldn't leave them alone. So we had to give them the boot. No one wants to do that, but I mean, that's a great question and something we think a lot about is how to maintain vendor neutrality at these events. And we've had challenges with folks, putting things into slide presentations. When I talk about some of the presenters, sometimes it's someone who's representing a vendor. Maybe we let them talk about, technologies that are loosely, related to their products, but we don't want them pitching their product in those presentations. So sometimes there's been challenges there. We like to review every single one of those presentations before they go up. But there's been, a few times where there's been a little bit of a switcheroo at the end before the presentation goes up, and we police that. So we are very, cognizant of that and try to keep it as neutral as possible at the events.
You could adopt the hockey penalty box.
Yeah, maybe we'll add that one. That's a good idea. Put a little cordoned off area.
Yeah.
If you get the red card, you're in the penalty box. Another cool thing about the USNUA events that we've been incorporating is bringing in folks new to the industry and giving them the ability to meet some of their peers. And we've been asking at the beginning of a lot of the events, is there anybody in the room who has open positions and maybe kind of be a matchmaking service for some of these folks to get together. So there's some more that we're planning for this year. As far as some of those efforts to get people new to the industry connected with folks that can get them started on their career. So stay tuned for some of those things. So we went through the active groups. Here they are again. You can find them on our site too, usnua.com. They should be right there on the front page, or else I think you can go to membership and groups at the top of the page as well.
I think we're up to 36 groups now. On the webpage, it says 36.
Is it 36? There you go. So
Kudos.
they have dated information on this slide. They might have done a refresh recently, potentially after I made this. So I mentioned the member resources before. Here's some examples of some of the things that we have there. Like I mentioned, Phil Gervasi did a great webinar on AI overview and large language models, which was, it was helpful for me. I really enjoyed that presentation. We got a video of the great debate. The Nugget NAF debate is up there now. The podcast panel in Pennsylvania, we've got, I think it's audio only, but we have that up there. In addition, it's on the Art of Network Engineering. I think that they have it in their in their feed now, so yeah, it should be available there. And then here's some examples on the bottom here of some of the presentations that folks have given at the events, and we make those available freely as well. So we have some featured ones at the top, but you can go root through, and if there's any you don't see on there, a good place to be is on the Slack to ask, hey, does anybody have a copy of that presentation? We try to put as many up there as we can, but obviously sometimes things fall through the cracks and we don't get them all. But great resources, highly recommend you sign up. A sign up is required, it is free. Everything that I'm talking about here is free to members. So the events are free, the member page is free, all of those things are free for members. Of course, on the sponsor side, that's how we pay for all this. So I'll have more information on that later if folks are interested in helping the cause, supporting what we're doing, and getting their brand in front of a bunch of network engineers. So last year we held 57 events nationwide. We had the 28 active groups last year. As we talked about, sounds like we've got a few more launched here in the past week or so. We have a bunch of registered members as far as the members only section, and we're hoping to double that number this year, and a lot of engagement. So you can see by the registration numbers, some of these events are really taking hold. So Nebraska is actually a pretty new chapter that took off very quickly. I mentioned Ohio being our oldest chapter. We'll get over 100 folks to those events now, but it took a long time to get there. Usually takes a little bit of momentum building to get to these sorts of numbers, but a lot of folks end up at these events. So again, from the perspective of sponsors, there's a lot of folks that you can be communicating with. So here's the Nugget NAF. Great event. If you were wondering, EVPN1, as far as the great debate, we actually voted at the end to see who won. Like there's been some question about some ballot stuffing there. So at the other event, this is the first time we've actually run this debate before in Ohio, and Layer 2 Leaf Spine won before, but this time EVPN won. It was fun. We actually added a raffle to it, and it was cool because we were at the Network Automation Forum event. Some of the authors of those some of the books about automation, we were able to raffle off their books and give those away. So it was a pretty fun event, very cool. And we're talking to Scott and Chris right now about the potential for doing it again here in the U.S. in the fall. So hoping to make that happen. I think the debate will be a different topic. Some like the automation community, there's a lot of software focused people, so I think we might have something more software focused for them. But this was a lot of fun. Hopefully, we're doing the same thing in the fall. So I'd like to pass things over to Scott Robon to talk about his experiences as a group leader. So Scott, take it away.
Thanks, Jason. I don't know about the last bullet. You make your own decision on that. But so I have my hat on as the Virginia NUG, one of the co-founders and leaders. I could just give you some flavor on how it works at a local chapter level. First of all, it's awesome. There's nothing like getting people together, with common interest in networking and having all sorts of different exposure and ideas in a pretty flexible forum. And having it around beer does not hurt. Again, you can have your choice whether you like the Kloss Holler or other. But 2024 has been the first year for Virginia NUG. We had 4 meetings last year. That was aggressive. We will not have 4 meetings in 2025. But the idea of hyper-local events and letting folks organize based on geography, what kind of businesses are in the area, and so forth, that gives, the 79 Ohio NUG ones different flavors. Sorry, not 79, 4 different Ohio NUG, versus New York with, Metro and upstate chapters. Virginia, we would like to move it around eventually, but we're kind of sticking with Northern Virginia and the DC metro area to get momentum and get some regularity there. What else can I tell you about how this works. We have great back office support from the corporate office, and I'll give a plug for Kayla Anthony in particular. She's not the only one, but she keeps all our planning meetings organized. She drives all the sponsor interaction. She makes sure we have panelists confirmed and speakers confirmed, and there's really minimal work that you have to do on the front line of being an organizer because of all that back end support. So, they really let you do what you want to do, what fits for your area, within guidelines that they set up, but it's not managed with an iron fist or anything like that. Virginia has some interesting particularities with, Data Center Alley being in Loudoun County. That's just about 10 miles away from where we've been meeting in Reston, Virginia. You have a lot of folks who have come in for hyperscalers, for data center operators, but also longtime telco folks, from the Bell Atlantic, UUNet, and subsequent comms heritage days. One of the other things that I think has been successful are the adjacent technology meetups. So there have been some collaboration with security organizations. There's room to do things like that. If you're familiar with WICO and the wireless LAN professional community, we're thinking about doing something in the fall in Virginia that organizes, a Virginia NUG meeting with the WICO herd meeting, and that could just be a lot of fun, right? Ask me some questions. What else should I say about local chapter activity?
Maybe you want to talk a little bit about, the selection of venues and the process that you go to, the amount of time that you actually put into, helping organize locally.
Yeah. You have to understand traffic patterns where you are and where critical mass of folks exist in a given area, and, timing and how accessible is it going to be to get to a given location. And traffic is a mess in the DC metro area. Like, everything's back to pre-COVID levels now. We had a reprieve for a few years, and that game is over. We were meeting in one location that was a little further away from DC, and we got decent uptake, but we had people request a location that was convenient to public transportation. So we actually got a location in Reston Town Center, which now has great metro subway access, and that's helped a little bit with uptake. You do have to, it takes local knowledge to pick venues, to understand timing and things like that, and to figure out what makes sense from a moving locations perspective. Like, even within the DC metro, we'd like to do something closer in. There's kind of been a revitalization of tech companies closer into DC in the Arlington area, if you know the area. So we're making decisions about, okay, we had a couple people ask about doing something at different venues. That's going to make it harder for people further out, but it might attract people closer in. What's the right decision? I don't know, but let's try it and see what happens. Also, because of where we are, the DC metro can attract people from Maryland, but again, traffic is a barrier. So I think there's a couple interested parties looking at starting a Maryland NUG that's not that far away, but the distance topologically is much greater because of the Potomac River barrier and the bridges to get across it. And I'm happy to help those folks get started. And even if we lose people that have been coming to Virginia because of the Maryland activity, that's fine. There are also groups of people that travel around. Like, there's a core of folks from PA NUG that come down to the Virginia NUG, and it's awesome to see people who want to do that. You can't count on that for regular attendance, but it's been fun to see. I've had the privilege of, I think, going to 10, 11, 12 different NUG meetings last year and into January this year to just kind of see how other NUGs operate. And because I'm an independent consultant, I can do that with my own marketing money. But it's been a great place to not just present, but also see, what the nuances are of different chapters. So if you're interested in putting up a NUG or thinking about it in your local area, I'd highly encourage talking to Jason, talking to the team, ask me questions. I mean, you can tell that I'm pretty positive on it, but I'll talk about all the hard things too. There are challenges. So, any other questions on local NUG stuff?
Is there some type of like threshold or metric for getting presenters and sponsors before you can set up and schedule a NUG? Or what if there was a situation where everyone just wanted to get together to hang out and commiserate on something or whatever? Like, is there an expectation that there's a number of presentations and things?
So I think Jason should follow up on that more, but I'll just say, short answer is yes. You have to have enough sponsorship to actually pay for food and beverages. That threshold is not onerous, and getting people to speak as a main speaker or be a panelist, like obviously the threshold for panelist is much easier. There are people who are very nervous about it. That's understandable. If you don't do this a lot, and don't let them see you sweat. Once you do it a couple times, you get more comfortable with it. But like it's a great place to build some muscle for things like that in a pretty low risk environment. I haven't seen any hypercritical NUG folks, that presentation was horrible. You should never do that again. I've never heard anything like that. But let me have Jason speak to the rest of those details.
Yeah. Thanks, Scott.
Yep.
Appreciate you. So yeah, like Scott mentioned, there is some, sometimes challenges as far as getting enough sponsorship to support an event. So in those cases, we may reschedule, push an event out if we don't get the kind of the minimum number we need, which is to cover the costs of the venue, the food, the potential alcohol based on the number of signups that we have. We have some rough calculations of what to expect because it varies by region. An event that's happening in Des Moines, Iowa is going to be a different cost than an event happening in downtown San Francisco. So we have to take all those things into account when we're working with sponsors to figure that out. So it's kind of a case by case sort of thing where we figure that out. We've been fortunate as far as presenters and panelists that they're in most places. It's a active community. There's folks who are interested in being a part of it, and it is great exposure for some of those folks who might not have it. So we've had, like, for example, in our backyard, we had a guy from the local electric utility present on his automation journey, and it was his first time presenting. He was nervous as heck, but it's a low impact place to start. There was 80, 100 people in the room, but he got to tell his story about how he built, started off with Ansible and moved on to Python and started building frameworks for himself. And it was really cool as he demoed and showed that off. And then there was engagement, after each part of the event. So if we have a speaker and a panel discussion, we try to leave space in the middle for folks to get together and talk. There was a lot of people that went up to him, asked him questions, a lot of good engagement that happened after the fact. So pretty cool.
So Jason, a couple of comments, a question and a comment. Question. Do you allow co-sponsors? So, a lot of people, a lot of local vendors, man, I probably can't pay for the whole thing, but I'll pay for a quarter or half.
We do.
Is that doable too?
It is. Yeah. So we've got 4 sponsorship levels today, and you can kind of pick and choose which one's appropriate for you. Each level gets you more stuff. Obviously, as you move up, from a cost perspective, you get more out of it as far as places where we're presenting your brand, whether it's on table placards, the slides, a few different options. We're actually introducing some more calls to action now too, where sponsors will get to include a link in our post-event message. So it's kind of if you don't want to click on it, you don't have to. So we're not trying to push any agendas or anything like that, but giving sponsors an opportunity to get their message out there about whatever, maybe it's a new product or service they're offering, or just in general about them. So yeah, there's a few different options, and at most events there's 5 or 6 sponsors typically, and those could be the typical hardware vendors, the Cisco, the Juniper, the Arista. It could be software vendors. Kentic is sponsored a lot of events. It could even be local VARs and MSPs will sometimes sponsor an event and have a presence there. So
okay, and one quick comment. The ones in Minneapolis, I would imagine most of them are the same way. They're very heavy engineering, very technical. One thing I wouldn't mind seeing more of is, there's a lot of experience at these things. You know, what does architecture look like? What is, you know, more of the higher level of the thought process as people want to progress in their career, right?
Yeah.
And incorporate more of that.
We kind of leave it up to the local organizers, you know, and that's good feedback to give your local organizers to say, hey, I'd like to see more of these sorts of topics, and then they might be able to build that. The cool thing is you know, you get the local flavor. They get to figure out, you know, what that looks like. Yeah. So how to get involved? Again, go to usnua.com, go to membership and become a member at the top of the page. Join the Slack to chat with us. Sponsors, we're always looking for sponsorships. So, you know, to support the cause, just email us at sponsorship@usnua.com. You know, it's a good way to get the word out about your brand, your products. Again, we're adding a few more calls to action. So a few things that we'll be able to offer. So those are coming out at the end of the month. And here's our great team. Scott mentioned, we you know, a lot of this is possible because of the folks that organize the events. So the folks behind the scenes that handle all the heavy lifting, so you don't have to.